Mr. Duclos. Minister Duclos, how are you doing?
I'm doing really well in your company, Paul.
It's wonderful to have you on the call. A real honor. I want to start this call by just giving you a huge congratulations. First of all, for being the first government to institute a poverty reduction strategy, and then meeting your first target early.
Thank you, Paul. And as I will say in a moment, this was teamwork, and Tamarack and you, Paul, and everyone on the line, and certainly many others outside of the line, have been key players in making that possible.
Well, it's truly exciting. I just want to let the audience know that the Canadian government launched Opportunity for All. So most of you know that, but some of our American friends on the call today may not know the full extent of this. It's a brilliant strategy. It was many years in the making. Lots of hope was put into it, and some great work was done. I know that our institute was involved as one of the groups that did around 33 community conversations to bring out some ideas. What's so exciting about what's happened here, just in the first 2 years of this plan, between 2015 and 2017. Now, some people might not know the full extent of what happened there, because the government, even as it was developing a plan, came out with a groundbreaking budget, essentially implementing the plan. I know that's not how they would say it, but that's how I saw it. And what happened? 825,000 individuals were lifted above the official poverty line. Minister Duclos, we're thrilled to see this progress. You met the target early. You have surpassed our expectations.
Many Canadians have been key players in that wonderful context which you have summarized. As you said, it has been many years in the making. That's because you have been hardworking and patient in advocating for that poverty reduction strategy, but not only for the strategy, as also, as you correctly stated, for the important measure that we were able to put together in making sure that in Canada, in the 21st century, more Canadians have a chance to live safely, to live in dignity, and to feel important, and to contribute to their full potential to the development of our economy, the development of our society. So thank you again for all that you have done. So I'm very satisfied on that point. Also very satisfied with the important progress that we've made, not only, of course, for the actions, I'll come back to that in a moment, the important actions, the measures, the new programs we were able to implement quickly because, again, of your advocacy and your support. Satisfied, yes, satisfied, because now we're having both a set of actions and a vision that fit, I think, really well in what we need to do as a country for the future. So you know, Paul and many others listening, that now the Canada Child Benefit, the National Housing Strategy, investments in our seniors, investments in public transit, in early learning and childcare, in fighting homelessness, in getting a clean environment for our children, our kids and grandkids. That's all so important in 2019 in Canada. It's also important for humanity. So we can be very satisfied with that progress. I'm very pleased with that. Yes, we've done a lot, but we need to do more, and that's why we can't be completely satisfied because of technological change, the globalization, the fact that many Canadians and human beings feel anxious towards their future. Now there is a level of anxiety which we feel, in part related to affordability. Not everyone is able easily to make ends meet in Canada in 2019. So that sense of anxiety, that difficulty to live well and to hope for the future, that must be recognized. Otherwise, if we lose hope, then we lose a lot of our abilities to increasingly work strong and hard for our country.
Minister Duclos, I'm there. I know we all are feeling anxious about the future. And I have no doubt that you want to do more. That's in your DNA. That's not just in the DNA of you, who I think are a remarkable individual in this portfolio, but also for your government. But it is also a time to celebrate. When we reduce poverty for 825,000 Canadians in such a short period of time, it's really the reason for this three-part series, which you're part of, to say, yes, we can. If we put our minds to it, we can reduce poverty. And I think we need to be really optimistic that the plan is working and that more will be done, just in the very sense that you're implementing it as we go. What are some of the lessons that you've learned since launching Opportunity for All?
Well, exactly what you've just said. The plan is working. The plan was to invest in middle-class Canadians and to help more Canadians join the middle class. And that plan is working, not only because, as you said, we've reduced together poverty by more than 20% in 2 short years. That means 300,000 children in particular lifted out of poverty. There's nothing that I find more difficult than to see children living in poverty, hampering their ability to develop themselves. So that's been clear. Number of seniors lifted out of poverty because of investments in old age security, the guaranteed income supplement, homelessness being addressed through the first ever increase in homelessness funding since 1999. And so that works. That also works in terms of economic growth. 1 million new jobs since 2015, the lowest unemployment rate since 1976. The typical middle class family, $2,000 better off in 2019 and in 2015. So though this is good news, the plan is working. What more, in answer to your question, is the fact that this is done together. And it's done with the Institute, with the SCM, with provinces and territories. Paul, we now have all provinces and territories and many municipalities and cities in Canada having a poverty reduction plan. Now, I think a plan is important for all sorts of reasons. Canadians expect their governments to be showing leadership, and that demonstrates, for instance, with the poverty reduction strategy at the federal level, clear measures of poverty, clear measures of inclusion, clear measures of resilience. Now, it's difficult to do something to fight poverty if you are not able to measure it. So to measure it and to make that measurement transparent was a key achievement to the poverty reduction strategy. The first time ever we now have an official poverty measure in Canada. And that official poverty measure is also designed to take into account the diversity of living conditions across Canada in terms of housing, in terms of access to transportation, in terms of the ability of people to feed themselves and to look after their families in different contexts, and also taking into account that cost of living prices also vary across the country. So we have a wonderful measure, an important measure of poverty, aligned with other measures of inclusion that look at housing, at food security, at housing, also considers the deep poverty measures, health, literacy and numeracy, youth participation, youth engagement, the shares of the bottom deciles, and of course, and also resilience and insecurity when it comes to the ability to resist, to go through shocks. So looking at poverty entry and poverty exit, the asset resilience. So all of these are important measures and can be disaggregated to support local initiatives and local partnerships.
It's amazing to think that we have all the provinces signed on, all the provinces and territories, and now 388 cities either having or developing community plans. It almost feels like Canada has a consensus that more can be done to end poverty. And I'm hopeful that in the future we'll be working well together. So, we noticed that this year, BC has become the first provincial strategy to tie aspects of their strategy to the national strategy. Do you see an integrated approach emerging? How can federal, provincial, and local partners work together to strengthen their work?
Well, let me repeat what you said earlier. In the first time, I think, ever in the history of Canada, we now have all provinces and territories aligned with the federal government on the importance of having poverty reduction strategies and plans. And the last one you mentioned is British Columbia. It's with its first provincial poverty reduction strategy, we now have all provinces and territories part of that important agenda. Now, and it's also not only an agenda, but it's also a way of talking about poverty and exclusion. And the words we use matter very much. If I maybe open a parenthesis, Paul, you asked me about what we have learned. One thing I have learned over the last years is the importance of the words we use when we talk about poverty reduction, avoiding the us versus them, which unfortunately is a language that excludes. Now, us, the better off, and them, those that are perhaps not working enough and not too lazy. That's what we hear sometimes, unfortunately, still in 2019. It's not us versus them. It's all together. The title of the poverty reduction strategy is Opportunity for All. And that's because we're all in it together. And when we have these conversations with provinces, territories, and municipalities and cities, we reinforce that we're all there together, and we absolutely need to keep working together in the future. And the example of British Columbia is a wonderful example, because in British Columbia, we have important challenges and important opportunities as well. British Columbia is a thriving province, vibrant, diverse, and growing, but it's a place where housing, for instance, is an issue. Now, access to affordable and quality early learning and childcare is also an issue. Transportation, the quality, the cleanliness of our environment, that's something which younger British Columbians in particular are very mindful and very concerned about. So the example of British Columbia is really well chosen to demonstrate this important collaborative work that we need to continue across all jurisdictions in Canada.
Marvelous. One last question, Minister Duclos. Given the early success of the strategy, how can we build on this momentum to reduce poverty by even greater levels than are set out in the strategy?
In two different ways. The first one is by recognizing what you've said. The plan works. We can, if we work together, if we work hard, we can reduce poverty. We can reduce exclusion. We can increase the ability of every Canadian to participate fully to his or her potential. That's the first thing that we must do. The second thing that we must state is that those investments in early learning and childcare, in housing, in the Canada Child Benefit, in the Canada Workers Benefit, which started in April 1st, those investments and many others, those investments have two impacts. The first one is a short-term impact. They immediately reduce poverty, they immediately create opportunities for Canadians. However, they also have a longer-term impact associated to investments. If you invest in children, if you invest in housing, if you invest in training, if you invest in workers, in transportation, then you make people better able to work, to look after their families, develop our children to their full potential, and therefore you create better opportunities for the future as well. So a better living standards for future Canadians and future generations of Canadians. So these investments have a very important long-term impact on the future of our country, and I think we can be very both hopeful and very grateful for those long-term impacts.
I just want to say thank you. First of all, not just as a politician, but as an individual. You've had an exemplary life and a commitment. You've shown commitment to poverty reduction long before you became minister. So first of all, Jean-Yves Duclos, we're proud of you as an individual. Thank you for all that you've done. But we're also very proud of your government. And I'm not just saying that because, it's coming into an election. The reality is that it's the first government to do something substantive and to bring together a whole country, to focus the effort, and then to ever be so humble, to have this great success and to say, I know we've had a success, but we need to do more. And that sends a message to the rest of Canadians. And for that, we are deeply grateful. We're here to help. Thanks again for joining us today.
Thank you, Paul.